Welcome everyone to this meeting of the Pyrenees Shire Council ordinary meeting on 19th of April 2022. We are streaming as the meeting chair. I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or a presentation will be recorded, and the voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream of recording. We have no presentations or questions this evening. The stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. The public is able to view this live stream via our website, www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, a recording will be made and available on our website. Please stand for the prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask you to give your blessing to this council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. Amen. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wallarong, Jar Jar Barong, Eastern Maar and Watchabollock tribes, whose land forms the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respects to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of these tribes on whose lands we meet today. Apologies for this evening, Mr. Gowans and Ms. Bramwell. Are there any notices of disclosure of interest from officers or councillors? None. Thank you.
I'll declare an interest in the confidential items council.
In the closed.
As it relates to the CEO's review.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Confirmation of previous minutes. The recommendation of minutes. The ordinary meeting of the council held on the 15th of March and the closed meeting of the council held on the 15th of March, as previously circulated to councillors, be confirmed. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? Thank you. Any business arising? No. Question one from Mr. Murdoch.
I'm happy to say that I met with Mr. Murdoch following his question to the last council meeting, and we talked through various issues that Mr. Murdoch raised. And I'm happy to say that Mr. Murdoch has also provided a submission to our engagement hub questionnaire around communications with the council. So that's completed.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to ask questions of council at ordinary council meetings if they wish. May attend or ask to us verbally, or they may send their questions to the council via email or the website. Person can ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting on any topic, and the questions and responses shall not exceed 5 minutes. Questions are received by 12 noon on the day of the meeting. Questions are read by the chairperson and councillor or council officer to whom the question is referred may immediately answer the question or take questions on notice for the next ordinary meeting. Public submissions are the same as the questions. Item 10, items economic development and tourism, items for noting. Are there any questions on the items for noting, councillors?
I just want to make an amendment, please, in regards to my council activity report. I just need to add the Lake Girls Smith Hall AGM, which is held on the 17th of March, but remove the Rotary dinner and the brass Sunday meeting.
Brass on brass was a wonderful event too. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Sir. Just to draw the public's attention to item 10.1.1, which is about the goldfields. And I know this has come to council before, but certainly it's a very important project in the sense of things for us and the surrounding municipalities. There's some terrific opportunity, and certainly if anyone wishes to find out some more information, there is a website for this, and if they contact council, they can find out that. Is there information about this on the council website?
It's on the Goldfields website, Councillor Clark, but happy for anyone that wants to get any information to contact us and we'll put in that direction. But yeah, Central Victoria and Goldfields World Heritage bids. Type that into the Google, you'll come up with their website.
And you'll find that there are 13 separate local governments involved, and it is strange for all of that number to be working together for such a wonderful event. Do I have a mover, councillors, for the honours? Councillor Clark, second, Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? Carried. Item 13, economic development and tourism. Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council's approval for a sponsorship application received from the Vocal Progress Association to support their monthly town markets in Avoca and Beaufort. The Vocal Progress Association coordinates the town markets since September 2019, and more recently added the coordination of the Avoca town market in late 2021. BPA have applied to council for a sponsorship of $5,000 per year over a period of 3 years commencing 1st of July 2022. In 2021-22 financial year, the project coordination was supported by the Kickstart Events funding provided through the state government. The report outlines some of the benefits associated with the markets, and the attendance has been really good. It's been a really important part of kickstarting events in the Pyrenees and bringing people back to events post-COVID. And there are a number of socio-economic benefits outlined in the report, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that council approves the sponsorship of $5,000 per annum for 3 financial years commencing the 1st of July 2022, and increases its annual sponsorship budget by $5,000 request.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillor Mover. Moved Councillor Carey, second Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? All those in favour? Carried. 13.2 assets and development has been withdrawn. Discussions are ongoing with the proponent, and will come to council at a later date. It may not come in if it's involved with the funds. 13.2.2, Mrs. Gleisner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to provide council with information that is relevant to making a determination planning permit application PA 21094 for the subdivision of land at Crown Allotment 15, Section 31 in the parish of Carnham. The background to this report is that council have received a planning permit application for a 7-lot subdivision in Snake Valley. The site falls within the rural living zone and is also subject to the bushfire management overlay, both of which are permit triggers for this application. It's a 37.9 hectare site that's currently vacant and has no structures. The application, in accordance with Section 55 of the Planning and Environment Act, was referred to Central Highlands Water Authority, the Country Fire Authority and Power Corps, all of which have not objected to the granting of a permit, subject to a number of conditions. And likewise, under Section 52 of the Act, the Mel Hopkins Catchment Management Authority and 7 adjoining landowners were provided notice, as well as public notice being provided via council's website. The application's also been referred to council's environmental health department for the purposes of assessing the wastewater treatment capacity of the site, and also council's engineering department, both of which do not oppose the granting of permits subject to conditions. Council did receive 4 submissions in relation to this application from 3 adjoining landowners, and I'll just quickly summarise the grounds or the basis of those submissions. The first element relates to the potential impacts on the road infrastructure that additional residential dwellings would contribute to additional traffic and road use that may result in damage to the existing road that's considered to be currently inadequate, and increase dust due to the road being unsealed. Other elements of the submissions included the size of the proposed lot, and developments are not in keeping with the quiet neighbourhood within the area, and also a sense that by approving this, that the rates of the adjoining properties would go up. There's also some concerns expressed for the impact on native vegetation and wildlife, and some concerns around the stormwater drainage from the site, and the potential for it to exacerbate some existing drainage concerns along the Snake Valley Morchip Road. Officers have provided a response to those submissions, and they're contained in the body of the report, which is publicly available. So I won't read them out now. But essentially, the application does demonstrate accordance with the objectives of the rural living zone, and as it will provide for residential use in a rural environment, whilst protecting and enhancing the natural resources, biodiversity and landscape values of the area. And upon conclusion, it's the assessing officer's opinion that the proposed subdivision is an acceptable planning outcome, as it will support further residential development within the zone that is set aside for rural residential purposes, whilst minimising and offsetting the impact on native vegetation and habitat. And therefore, it's the officer's recommendation to council that council, having considered all matters required under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and the provisions of the planning scheme, determined to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the subdivision of 7 lots at Crown Allotment 15, section 31 in the parish of Carnham, being volume folio, vol 08158 folio 482, Snake Valley Morchip Road, subject to a number of conditions that I won't read out.
Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this. In my time in council, this is certainly one of the better subdivision applications that I've seen. I think it's quite fair to say that the applicant has gone to quite a bit of trouble to deal with some of the issues there. In the context of the zoning, I think as usual in these things, council has to be guided by the zoning, and this is exactly what we are telling people to do in this zone, is used for rural living, and that's what we've got in terms of what the application is. I know the comments by the objectors in terms of the road. This is one of our higher level roads, and it is actually only a fairly short strip of gravel there, so it probably will be a time to come where that road will be looked at when we get some more people. I'm not making any promises tonight, but at some stage in the future, it's likely that that road will get connected up, because there is only quite a short strip of gravel on it, and it's quite well maintained. The environmental impacts, I think, is the important one in that sense, and I went down and had a look at the block myself on Saturday just to understand that. And as a block, it's got some terrific native values in terms of vegetation, and I'm very impressed that the applicant has tried hard to actually preserve that in this instance. Because it's been grazed, you know, it looks pretty, but there's also probably a fair bit of weed in the context of the grasslands, but that is the reality of what it is in that sense. And the other thing to point out is that if you look at the map on the council website and you see those beautiful large blocks for the houses, so they're called the building envelopes, they are actually a building envelope that gives people the capacity to move. The house inside those yellow blocks will only be about a quarter of the size of that, but that allows for a house and a shed and those type of things. And again, it's part of a good application that actually gives people the opportunity to actually see this is where we've got to build, that's already locked in, and they buy that, buy beware, the sense of things, and that is worth, again, work to protect the name. So you're very good at support.
Thank you, councillor Clark. Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I reiterate everything Councillor Clark has had to say. We are now living in 2022. I believe that the opportunity for people under current circumstances living with COVID, what it's done has achieved the opportunities for people to move out onto these smaller blocks. It's an opportunity for the community of Snake Valley to go ahead and support their, not only their community life, but local businesses and schools. We should be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Theo.
Thank you. I do, again, I reiterate what both my peer councillors have said. I do want to speak very much about the environmental impact. We've had some really good information given to us in the submissions. It's a thanks to the developer to be able to address some of those. But just to ensure that they are heated and we are able to protect those areas. And I know those stipulations have been put in place. So just again to highlight, as long as we can make sure that they are heated. And also some of those elements of the project which were limiting the amount of lots of things, that was wonderful to be able to do that as well. And understanding too, I know that there was concerns about the amenity, but understanding that this rural living zone does back onto a farming zone, which are quite different zones, even though they look like they're in a similar area. So we have had to be very aware of that. And one issue I definitely want to highlight, and I know that this will be addressed, but to again plead that it can be addressed as highly as possible, and that is the impact of that added stored water. I know there's stipulations in place, and we saw that in the fourth submission there, the impact that's having on a neighbouring property, to be able to ensure that the correct culverts are put in place for those crossovers. I know this is part of the plan. I'm just reiterating that to make sure we're not adding to that, to be able to mitigate any of those problems. And as has already been said, and Councillor Clark alluding to, this is going to be a high collector road and will become more used. And it is a gravel road at this stage, a short section that is in between other bitumen roads there that are main use roads. So as long as we're able to protect that and maintain it to a safe current and future use level for that future traffic impact. So that was all. There's not really a question there, sorry, but just to really highlight and bring up those issues and objectives I've already brought forward. But I do understand, I do commend being able to protect that native vegetation that is there, and that we can protect that beautiful area for great, good development. Thank you.
Councillor Ferrara.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably just a quick question for Ms. Wiseman. In relation to this, been some discussion about the driveways and the entrances and the impact that may have on the road with the excess water. So I think it's covered in conditions 21, 22 and 23, but just for people's clarity, they will have to be built to a standard that will comply with all the conditions and certainly won't have any adverse impact on that roadway. Is that correct?
Thanks, Councillor Ferrari. Yes, that is correct. So all road excavation permits, which allows the construction of the vehicle crossover to connect the road to the driveway point, are subject to council approval and will be received, assessed and, if satisfactory, approved by council's engineering department. And that allows the council to ensure that there's no exacerbated impacts on drainage, minimising any impacts on native vegetation, making sure that lines of sight for vehicles travelling along and vehicles ingress and egress is safe. So there's that rigorous process that officers will go through in assessing that application.
Thank you, Ms. Wiseman. And I'd just like to go over what the other councillors have said without going over old Brandon. I certainly haven't been on the council as long as some of the others previously spoken, but it is one of the better applications that I've seen come before us, and a lot of the considerations that we would have expected to be contained in it were contained in it, and I think that makes our decision making a bit easy. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. The proponents and the planners, I think, need to be commended for the application in the way that they also worked with our staff. The original application was for 8 subdivision, and in working with our staff and bringing it back to 7 made it a better subdivision overall. And we appreciate people working with us to come up with these great outcomes. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried. 13.2.3, transfer station review. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure Mr. Gowans would do a much better job of presenting this report than what I do, but he has prepared
We'll all give you a rating.
well, he's prepared the report, so I'll thank him for that. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's approval to extend contract C2 2021-008 for the transfer station operations for 1 additional year. The extension will enable Council to better understand the waste trends for the community. An investigation into the visitation rates at our transfer stations was undertaken following the introduction of the universal roadside waste collection service to determine whether there have been any significant changes to the rates of visitation to the transfer stations since that service changed. The review identified that visitations to the Avoca and Beaufort transfer stations actually had increased during the period of June 2021 to February 2022, but have recently returned to the previous year's visitation rates. While its plans for its Snake Valley transfer stations, the visitation rates appear to have stayed pretty consistent. The acceptance of landfill and recycled material at the transfer stations since the introduction of the expanded household street collection has changed. There's a lower amount of material being accepted at the transfer stations, with landfill material dropping from 813 tonnes in 2019-20 financial year to approximately 700 tonnes expected this financial year in 2021-22. Co-mingled recycling tonnage prior to the glass being removed from the recyclable stream was 127 tonnes in 2018-19, and co-mingled material accepted at the transfer stations for this financial year is 18 tonnes compared to 45 tonnes from 2019-2020, which is not surprising given the introduction of the roadside collection service. So, councillors, in the context of this review, in the short term, there doesn't appear to be too much change or too much significant change in terms of the reduction of the transfer stations. To the extent that a further extension of the existing contract would be appropriate without any reduction in the service hours of the transfer stations, given the level of visitation that's currently seen there at the moment. So, councillors, the recommendation therefore is that Council awards a 1-year extension to Four Seasons Waste Proprietary Limited for the contract C 2021-008 based on the tender price received in 2021, and that Council continues to monitor the transfer station waste disposal to inform future service level provisions at the municipal transfer stations.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillor Vance, Secretary, Councillor Keeler.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to support this recommendation, Mr. Chair. It's very obvious that Four Seasons are doing a great job. I know from where I live in Landsborough, every Tuesday you get your bin out, your bin's collected, and there's no problems there on time, all the time. So, while we're getting such great service, we could extend the contract and with confidence.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank
Mr. Mayor. I think as Mr. Nolan's alluded to, we're making progress. We've got more of a road to go against. It's worth us trying to see twice in terms of the contract in that sense. I think we have about a 12% reduction in landfill by the look of it in terms of waste, and that's a good thing. So I think let's stick with another 12 months. So one that I found really interesting, Mr. Nolan, was the actual weight of glass, which is about 24 kilos per person, which I thought is a lot. I have to think about that now, but it's about 24 kilos of glass per person per year. It's a very important something to set in the year. So that's a fair bit of a thing. Thank you.
Only you would have done that, Matt.
Probably.
And there's someone out there doing an awful lot of glass to make up for your cans. Thank you, councillors. All those in favour? Carried. 13.3.1 Child Safe Policy and Code of Conduct. Ms. Bramwell is unwell today and has been replaced by Mr. Maudsley. Sorry, mate.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the purpose of this report is to request Council's adoption of a revised child safe policy and child safe code of conduct for councillors and staff. In 2015, the Victorian Government introduced minimum compulsory child safe standards for organisations that have regular and direct contact with children or young people to create and maintain safe, child safe environments, including local government. The standards are now being reviewed after approximately 5 years, and they've now incorporated 11 new child safe standards, which are contained in this report and also in the policy and the code of conduct. In preparation for the standards, council officers are reviewing the existing child safe framework to ensure it continues to meet the requirements of the 11 standards. The officer's recommendation in this case is that council approves the revised child safe policy for this to be implemented within the organisation, and council approves the revised draft child safe code of conduct for councillors and staff, and for this to be implemented, including within the organisation, including volunteers and contractors.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Councillors. Move to Councillor Keeley, second to Councillor Brown. Councillor Keeley.
Only this is obviously a very important and necessary code that we need to be able to protect our children and those working with them. So, yeah, thank you for the preparation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's important that we have a guiding document. I think that's first and foremost, but I agree with Councillor Keogh, and it's all our responsibility to protect our children and their well-being, their mental health, and make sure that they're safe. So I just think it's good to have that guiding document, but we also have to play that part and make sure that our kids are safe at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. The only drawback I find with these sorts of policies and procedures is that you need to have one. I would like to be involved with these sorts of documents aren't required. Maybe I occasionally slip into doing them. All those in favour? Carried. 13.3.2 proposed budget 2022 and 2023. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present council with the Pyrenees Shire Council draft budget for 2022-23 financial year and the draft 10-year financial plan covering the years 22-23 through to 2031-32. This report includes a recommendation that council, in accordance with section 51, 91, 94 and 96 of the Local Government Act 2020, endorses the release of the 22-23 draft budget and draft 10-year financial plan. It is recommended that council, in accordance with its community engagement policy, advertise the draft budget and the draft 10-year financial plan for public comment and invite public submissions, and provide for those who wish to speak to their submissions the opportunity to do so before council. Council is required to consider all submissions prior to adopting the budget and the draft 10-year financial plan. The Local Government Act 2020 provides that a council must prepare and adopt a budget each financial year and the subsequent 3 financial years by the 30th of June each year. The council must develop and review the financial plan, the 10-year financial plan. It must develop the budget and revise budget 10-year financial plan in accordance with the policy and in accordance with the financial management principles. If endorsed by consultation, the 22-23 draft budget 10-year financial plan will be made publicly available and council will invite written submissions. Members of the community who prepare written submissions can request to be heard. Some of the key features in the preparation of the budget this year, in the first instance, it reflects a rate cap of 1.75%, which is a cap imposed by the Victorian State Government. The rate cap applies to the overall general rate revenue raised across property types in the municipality. However, the change in the level of rates charged for individual properties may vary from 1.5% rate cap based on the movement in the valuation of individual properties because of the yearly revaluation of properties as determined by the Victorian State Government. And to this extent, council has also recommended council review its revenue and rating plan and incorporate that into the draft documents that are placed on public exhibition to ensure there's appropriate equity in the level of rating charged across various property types. This budget has been prepared in consideration of the financial viability of council over the life of the 10-year financial plan. Both the capital works program and the service delivery have been set at a sustainable level. The draft budget has been prepared with the following parameters. Firstly, it's factored in inflation, which as at March 2022 was sitting at about 3.5%. It's expected that inflation will rise to around 4% come June, and an average of 3% has been factored into the budget document over the annual period. The rate cap, as we've said, is 1.75%. And then the waste charge for the 22-23 financial year is expected to be no change, with properties with the curbside collection remaining at $498. Council will recall there was a substantial increase in the waste charge in the previous financial year, which reflected the change in the service level with the universal roadside collection service. Other features in the budget include the fact that the total revenue to be raised by rates and charges is $12.79 million. The total revenue, estimated revenue from government grants is expected to be $11.12 million. And this includes operating grants of $7.3 million from state and Commonwealth governments and capital grants of $3.8 million, which includes $1.3 million from Roads for Recovery and $2.41 million from the Commonwealth Flood Road Construction Program. The draft budget also proposes borrowings of $650,000 for the purchase of land in Beaufort to provide for future residential development. This borrowing is to be paid off over a 10-year period at an interest rate of an estimated 5%. And councillors, this is an appropriate environment to consider revisiting borrowing as an appropriate means to raise revenue for for land purchase and other appropriate developments. The budget provides capital expenditure of total capital expenditure of $7.7 million, which includes the roads recovery and local road community infrastructure components. In summary, councillors, the recommendations in the report has been amended slightly, so I'll read the revised recommendation. That council gives public notice in accordance with section 55 and 96 of the Local Government Act 2020, the Act, of council's intention to adopt at a council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 14th of June 2022, the draft 22-23 budget prepared in accordance with section 94 of the Act. The council gives public notice in accordance with section 55 and 96 of the Local Government Act 2020, the Act, of council's intention to review and adopt at a council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 14th of June 2022, the draft 10-year financial plan prepared in accordance with section 91 of the Act. 3, that council gives public notice in accordance with section 55 and 96 of the Local Government Act of council's intention to review and adopt at a council meeting to be held on the 14th of June, the draft revenue and rating plan prepared in accordance with section 93 of the Act. That council gives public notice seeking submissions on the proposals contained in the 22-23 draft budget. Written public submissions will be accepted for 28 days commencing Monday the 9th of May 2022, ending 9 a.m. Monday the 6th of June 2022. That council gives public notice seeking submissions on the proposals contained in the draft 10-year financial plan, with written submissions similarly for a 28-day period closing on the 6th of June 2022. 6, that council gives public notice seeking submissions on the proposals contained in the draft rating and revenue plan. Written submissions will be accepted for 28 days up until the 6th of June. And that 7, council gives public notice of that any person who wishes to be heard in support of a submission received by council should indicate in the written submission that he or she wishes to be heard. Any person requesting that he or she be heard in support of a submission is entitled to appear before a meeting of council either personally or by a person acting on behalf of the council meeting scheduled for the 7th of June 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillor Kew.
If I can just ask a question first, Mr. Nolan, you said in your commentary that we were going to borrow the money at 5%. Am I correct in understanding that as figured to allow 5% in the budget, but we certainly don't expect to go to the market and pay 5%?
Mr. Mayor, thank you, through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Clark. That's the average over the life of the loan that's provided for, but we would obviously sort of go to the market and get the best possible deal we can.
Thank you. Just to clarify that to the community that we don't have to pay those kind of rates. We actually do pay very good rates. This is a very good steady state budget, and we certainly encourage any of the community who have some questions about where we're spending our money to have a good reading and certainly talk to council or talk to your individual councillors about that in that sense of things. Council really just needs to get its valuation sorted and we can finalise the actual amount to go out for public comment, and I understand those valuations only just come in this week, so we've got work to do and look at that, because as everyone knows, everybody's property has gone up this year, but not quite like the same amount, so we've got a little work to do that in the next week or so.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Kew. Any other councillors? This, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the more important documents that we create under legislation, and it is out there in the near future for you to have a look at, to dissect if you want to, and to come back and talk to us about it. We believe there are people out there who possibly have some really good ideas, and we'd love to hear from you. We normally get very few people come and talk to us about our budget. But everybody has an opinion on how we spend your money when you give it to us. So here's your opportunity to get in first. Please take that opportunity if you believe you can give us some good information. Councillors, confirmed, all those in favour? Carried. Community grants, 13.3.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the purpose of this report is to seek Council's consideration in awarding of the community grants applications received for round 2 of the 21-22 program. Council allocates funding in its annual budget for community grants to recognise the importance of providing financial assistance to community groups, services and organisations located or operating within the Pyrenees Shire. We have a range of grants that we provide. Council allocated $84,000 in the 21-22 budget to fund the community grants program after allocating funding in round 1 to 21-22, funding of $34,000 remain to remain for round 2. Round 2 of the 21-22 program was open for applications throughout the month of March. A total of 24 applications were received for funding of $54,454. In summary, we received 1 application for a youth event, 2 applications for an event, 14 applications for programs, projects and equipment, and 6 applications for capital works and infrastructure. The recommendation is the Council confirms funding allocations as per the attachment, and Council considers the allocation of remaining community grants program funding of $5,635.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Councillor Kerr, seconding Councillor Vance.
Just to speak to that, thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, it was a great amount of limited applications this time, so we thank the communities that put that work into doing that. And I was just really pleased that there's quite a good spread. So that summary talking about we've got a youth event and we've got a couple of events, projects, equipment, capital works and infrastructure. We're able to support our community groups in a number of different ways, and it's just fabulous to be able to do that and to look at not wasting any. We're looking at making sure we can use those other funds as well as we can in the future. So thank you.
Yes, nice to see it goes around all Shire, and just to reaffirm, there's still $5,000 there that's available. So really Council will consider in the near future.
Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark.
If I can leave an amendment just to that second one to put some clarity to what we might do.
And your amendment
Is
is
at the second point, which is we receive a further report from the council officers before the end of this financial year, so we're going to make a due to allocate that money.
second. Councillor Ferrari. Any discussion, councillors? All those in favour of the amended motion? Carried.
So Mr Mayor, that now means that is
So that becomes the motion. And then we'll hear out the councillors.
Any debate, councillors? Councillor Clark.
just if I can add a couple of points to things, just to comment on what Councillor Vance said. We've already allocated $78,500 to our community, which is really good. That'd be nice to get the last 5.5 out the door as well. In that sense of things, there's 15 recipients for grants tonight, which is good in that sense. But I certainly probably would note that councils in the discussion tonight, which talk particularly about the 2 food banks in the context that they provide a very valuable service, but what they applied for was probably something council could support, but I think council would be very open to looking to support in other ways, if there was other ways, and encourage them to talk to our officers.
Thank you, councillor. Any other discussion? All those in favour? Carried. 13.4.1, reconciliation. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide a progress update on Council's journey of reconciliation and to seek commitment from Council for ongoing action towards reconciliation and Aboriginal self-determination through the implementation of the reconciliation plan. Council's reconciliation journey began formally in early 2000. Since that time, Council has produced several reconciliation plans, been involved in various programs and activities that support reconciliation, including regularly supporting NAIDOC Week Schools program and more recently embedding reconciliation on council practices, holding awareness training, holding more welcome to country and smoking ceremonies at events, and engaging with traditional owners on projects. Council produced its first reconciliation, the RAP plan, in 2019 and is now working through actions detailed in the reconciliation plan 2021 to 2024 in consultation with the Reconciliation Advisory Committee, and that committee comprises members of the community and representatives of the traditional owner groups. Of the 31 actions contained in the Reconciliation Action Plan, 3 actions have been complete, 22 are in progress and 6 have not yet commenced. A copy of the progress report on the action plan is attached to this report. The advisory committee was formed in early 2021, and the purpose of this committee is to support the successful implementation of the Council's reconciliation plan by committing to reconciliation and aspiring to be a leader in the community to advance reconciliation locally and with other stakeholders. The committee has met on 2 occasions to date, with the next meeting being in May of this year. The committee is committed to be involved in more advocacy for wider truth-telling efforts, which is identified in the reconciliation plan. The issue of truth-telling is currently at a state level, with the Yuruk Justice Commission being formally announced. Yuruk was set up as an agreement between the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria and the Victorian Government, independent of the Assembly and of Government, and is the first formal truth-telling process in historical and ongoing injustices experienced by First Nations peoples in Victoria. An opportunity for Council in this space, initiated by the advisory committee, has been suggested to seek that the First Peoples Assembly considers holding an event or a meeting in our municipality. First Peoples Assembly of Victoria is the independent and democratically elected body to represent traditional owners and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Victoria. First Peoples Assembly of Victoria is the voice for Aboriginal communities across the state, representing them in the next phase of treaty process. The Victorian Government has prepared the new Victorian Aboriginal and Local Government Strategy, which was launched by the Local Government Minister on the 21st March 2022. This strategy is a roadmap towards self-determination for Aboriginal Victorians, local councils, and the Victorian Government is framed around several strategic pillars and recommended actions, which are detailed in the report. And these pillars include culture, respect and trust, awareness and engagement, accountability and direction, governance and participation, as well as economic participation, health and wellbeing, and resourcing and funding. So, councillors, there are 3 things that are coming together in one place here. Firstly, there's the Council's reconciliation plan and our own journey. The second is the First Nations Assembly, and to that extent, the reference is to your Justice Commission, First Peoples Assembly of Victoria, which there is a copy here for councillors to peruse. And the third thing is the Victorian Aboriginal Local Government Strategy 2021 to 2026, which is a significant priority in the state government's agenda And it does call on local governments to participate in partnership with state government and traditional owner groups to achieve the objectives of that strategy. In conclusion, councillors, there's a recommendation that council acknowledges the work undertaken by staff and the Reconciliation Advisory Committee to implement the Reconciliation Action Plan as outlined. 2, that council continues to have regard to the Victorian Aboriginal local government strategy to inform and guide council activities that seek to improve Aboriginal self-determination. And 3, that council liaises with the relevant traditional owners within the Pyrenees with the view to seeking to host a meeting of First Peoples Assembly in the Pyrenees municipality if that's appropriate. And in putting this report together, I also like to acknowledge Jane Bowker for her great work in this space. Thanks, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Councillors, we have a report before us. So, Councillor Martin, seconded Councillor Fernand.
We speak simply to say that to support the work that the officers are doing in this interim council. To note that on our agendas for the first time today, we actually had that we're on Jojo Run Country, which I think is a really nice schedule. As we move around the Shire, it helps people to understand that we have 4 councils
No, I think this is a process that we're going to go through for a considerable length of time, and maybe always. And I support the work done by the officers to bring this to the point of attack, but it is an ongoing thing for the council to consider. Councillors, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 13.4.2 Gender Equality Action Plan. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to inform council about the completion and submission of the Gender Equality Action Plan and to seek a commitment from council to adequately resource the implementation of the plan ongoing. Pyrenees Shire Council plan was submitted to the Commissioner for Gender Equality on 31st March 2022 in accordance with the Gender Equality Act 2020. Commission website provides a summary of the provisions of the Act, which are outlined in this report. And I won't go through them all, but I'll just highlight the first 3 dot points there. That the Act promotes gender equality by requiring Victorian public sector, local councils and universities to take positive action towards achieving workplace gender equality. Requiring these organisations to consider and promote gender equality in their policies, programs and services, and establishing a public sector gender equality commissioner to provide education, support, implementation and enforce compliance. Furthermore, Mr. Mayor, for many Victorians, gender inequality may be compounded by other forms of disadvantage or discrimination that a person may experience due to other characteristics such as race, aboriginality, religion, ethnicity, disability, age, sexual orientation, gender identity. The Act requires organisations to consider these when developing strategies and measures to promote gender equality. So council's, the Pyrenees Gender Equality Action Plan provides on the background, and I've just copied the background from the report into the council agenda. It's worth highlighting the first couple of paragraphs. That the Gender Equality Act 2020 requires each council to address its obligations to promote gender equality in the place, consider gender equality when developing policies, programs and delivering services to the public. Gender equality is an important social and economic goal. Societies with greater gender equality have lower rates of violence towards women and children, with better outcomes for women in terms of social, political and economic participation. And Pyrenees Shire understands the pivotal leadership role to advance gender equality in the organisation and within the community and in the design and delivery of council services and programs. Council recognises that improving gender equality for women is an important issue and has endorsed the development of Council's first Gender Equality Action Plan, which will guide actions over the next 4 years. Gender Equality Action Plan 2021-2025 is an internal council document that will provide an integrated whole-of-council approach to increase gender equality for women within council. The plan guides initiatives to address gender equality across council. I'll also just highlight that this goes hand in hand with council's development of its workforce plan, which is required under the Government Act. In conclusion, Mr. Mayor, I make the following recommendation. The council provides an appropriate level of resourcing to implement the Pyrenees Gender Equality Action.
Thank you, Mr. Money. Councillors. Seconded. Councillor.
Thank you. Again, this is an incredibly important action plan to put in place, so it's really important that we're able to resource that and to meet those needs within our staff, and also how that reflects in our community as a whole, and making sure that we're inclusive and hearing people and being able to give people those opportunities in a fair and balanced level. So thank you for this and supporting it.
All those in favour? Carried. Councillor reports and general business. Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, stand up there and talk about that. I hope everyone's still having a very good Easter period and had a happy and safe one, because it's been a bit of a crazy year still. And also, I guess the recent rain has been very welcomed by farmers in our area, and we've got a lot of farmers being able to get busy out there putting in those crops, and after having had a very big burn-off period as well, which has been, I think, gone very well. I don't think we've had perhaps a few little instances, but nothing that created an emergency situation. So that's been fantastic in regards to the farming effort down our way. I did have the Lake Goldsmith Hall AGM, and they're in an interesting space at the moment, looking at the hall needing a number of upgrades, and we're now they're in contact with council officers to be able to look at where to go with that program, and we've also taken the initiative, and we've had in one of our items tonight to be able to cover some of those immediate needs for the hall to be covered through grants. So they do a wonderful job, that committee, and that hall is used for a number of different organisations, including CFA, including local family groups, all sorts of things. It's the only hall in that sort of area that does do a lot for that community. So that's wonderful. Those people that are continuing to protect that hall. I do have the Snake Valley Anzac Day dawn service coming up on Monday, which again is put together by a number of volunteers, and it's a fantastically attended event for Snake Valley. So it's brilliant to be able to come together in a COVID-friendly sense, but to be able to acknowledge our service men and women. I've also, this year's a bit different, I will also be attending the Stockyard Hill Avenue of Honour official opening. So this is a really wonderful event to be able to recognise, again, servicemen and women that served from that area, and to be able to significantly open that on Monday, which will be fantastic. So again, our small communities have fought and protected and done this for us over the time, and still do with our defence personnel. So to be able to acknowledge them is wonderful, and to have that living memorial there. Also, I have a VFF meeting, so the VFF are looking to come together at Snake Valley, which they haven't had a strong group for a little while, so that will be sort of the start of that group getting together in the start of May. So it'll be interesting again to be able to support our farmers in this changing time, so we can think of that as well. That's it for me. Now, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had the usual meetings of Councillor Capper, which was at Carrum Valley, which was good to go down there. They look after things very well themselves down there, and it's a credit to them here. They've got the oval surrounds looking, so that's really good. Also attended Rotary Club Excellence Awards evening, and where a number of people were nominated, and they received an award for a various range of incentives, and it was really, really good to see those people get rewarded for their efforts over the year, and in a number of areas. And some of them were quite surprising. I think a couple of them won a couple of awards. So a lot of these people doing a lot of the stuff all the time, we don't really hear about it, but it's good to see them being recognised. So really good for the Rotary Club to do that. I did attend the Brass on the Grass event, which was a lovely evening up at the Beaufort Golf Club, and it was really pleasant sitting there in the evening, just in the afternoon and evening, just listening to the band and having a bit of refreshment. I did attend the Walk Fest, which was really, really fantastic. So it was run over a couple of days on the weekend, and a lot of work goes into organising that Walk Fest throughout the year, and they do a fantastic job. There was about 130 participants over a couple of days, and the thing that's really pleasing is they cater for a whole range of people within the community, including those with mobility issues. So that's really, really very inclusive. They encourage anybody, even those with mobility issues. So that's just fantastic. Beaufort by Twilight was another major event which was held in Beaufort, and it really basically wasn't closing off the street, but it encouraged the traders to stay open. It had bands and events and things around the town, and it was really, really well attended. I don't know how many people there, but I'd probably safely say over 1,000. So it was really, really well attended, and it was a really great initiative, and I hope we can do it again, so maybe a couple of times through the year. So that's really good. It encourages that social interaction and people to get out and about, and of course to help their local traders as well. Beaufort Secondary College School Council meeting, and just a few other B4B meeting. That's about it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Like all other councillors, we attended Current Valley. I was a little disappointed with the entire of the other councillors sitting in the stand.
We expect,
Going to a council meeting afterwards.
we expect no less of you.
Rural councils had our Zoom meeting for the month. We're sad to see that two senior members from local government Victoria have since moved on. They are great advisors to and friends of rural councils in Julie Reid and Paul Roche. Those members were very easy to talk to, told us a few insights as to what was happening in behind the doors at King Street. Valuable access. Let's hope that they enjoy retirement, can get some replacements to logistics. Our chair launched rural councils approach to the upcoming election, federal election on the 4th of April. I believe that she pushed hard for the sustainability of the rural councils, 38 small rurals. She's pushing funding for broadband in the area, and I remind our CEO that we still need some broadband access in the Moon Belt, one of our flagship areas that struggles to get access to the outside world with quality broadband. I believe, anyway. I chaired the Glen Patrick Reserve Committee of Management. Unfortunately, their secretary had gone down with COVID. The numbers were short, but they'd done a quick rescue that made it was up to. And I also, on the 24th of March, along with the mayor and the CEO, met with a group from Landsborough, encouraging council to fully support the opening of a store in Landsborough. And that was quite a valuable meeting, I believe. We gave the people in the resource area a good hearing. Mind you, we spent $20,000 in consultants, and the consultants' recommendations were that the best place for the store is going to be in the old store that was operational. So council working closely with the current owner, and hopefully very soon we'll see some action in that area. Like Tanya, I've got the upcoming RSL service plans, but all was well attended, and I pay respects to the gentleman in Landsborough, a former vet, to organisers for these days, and we're very thankful for Gary for the efforts. That's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Lennon, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So a number of constituent matters during March, been arranged with the Waterloo to walk through the West on those ones. So I thank you for the heads up on street privilege. Just I met with him with MAB had on a couple of weeks ago. Really good talk to him about the kind of work that we're doing with financial sustainability, and he shared with us the work that he's doing as well. So that's good, and we'll continue to keep in touch on that space. I've been a bit busy in terms of the media around the federal election. Just to follow up with my comments in the Pyrenees Advocate on Friday, just to say to anyone who's not sure what the federal government does for council, please talk to the council or councillors. If you do have the chance to be in politics, hear about the money we receive, which means we don't take it out of your pocket. That's a really good thing. The other one that I think is worth mentioning is I had a meeting with Vicky Hancock, who's the manager of the community bank, because I was very interested in exploring with her a little bit further the concept that we council supported last year in terms of the money that was provided for Bolescroft and council guaranteeing that loan, and really talking to her in the context that this is a community fund of many community funds around the state that's thinking of renewable energy, and is the bank engaged, and very much a conversation about how to get the bank more engaged in those types of things. So that was a really positive conversation, probably a conversation for us to continue at an officer level with Vicky as well, I think, in that sense. So that's kind of about it for my page. Other than say go to Kangaroos on Saturday, because sports got their first game in the Central Highlands League. So we did well with playing field, so that's always a good win. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. The CEO and I also met Stuart Miller, and yes, I agree. There's some synergies there that we can utilise to support both groups of people. At Central Highlands Council meeting virtually, where all the councils came together and discussed opportunities for us as a group. I don't think it's as tight as the group when I was last there, and I'd like to see more work done collaboratively for the good of the area rather than individual councils. We had a meeting with the Australian Services Union as to rate capping. It was an interesting meeting. Their proposal was that rate capping reduces the ability of councils to employ staff and to pay staff at a proper wage. And there was no discussion with that. We agree totally with them, but the point was made that being the union representing those staff, wanted them straight to the government with regards to rate capping. They weren't very forthcoming. They're pointing the bone at us, and we need to do this, we need to do that. And we turned it around and said, well, we think we go and talk to your Labor government. They weren't terribly interested. It's disappointing and great. Yes, had a meeting on the Victorian Goldfields World Heritage bid, and it's something that there are a number of councillors in our group, and I hope one of them will hold this very dear to our heart. It's something this region of Australia could benefit greatly from if it gets up. It's got a long way to go, it's years away, but it has to be promoted by the 13 local councils to the state government, who then have to promote it to the federal government, who, if they agree, then have to promote it on to World Heritage listing. So it's not a slow, short process, it's going to take a long time. But the experts tell us there is nowhere else in the world that has a goldfields heritage area like we have here in Victoria. So hopefully it leads and gets up. Opened the Patong tournament here in Avoca, which was, I don't think it was delayed by COVID last year, but it's one of the ones that, the November tournament was. But it is wonderful to see people out and about playing Patong in the middle of town. In a lot of cases, a glass of wine in hand, enjoying themselves immeasurably. And it's very, very well supported by people from overseas as well. They come from everywhere. It's great for the team. And as Councillor Vance mentioned, we've got plans for asset committee. We have a discussion with them. They have a proposal. We are still supporting the use of the original store. The support of that is only so far. The original store doesn't get up and running. We will have to take a look at what other options are available to council. We have to give the store every support we can in wherever we can support it. But it must get up and get running. Thank you, Councillor. I will now close the meeting to members of the public and have the streaming service shut down pursuant to provisions section 4.1.1C Council Government Rules and section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting be closed to the public in order to consider confidential items. The recommendation, council, is that the meeting be closed to members of the public in accordance with those legislative requirements to discuss confidential matters. Moved Councillor Keogh, seconded Councillor Ferrari. All those in favour? Carried.